The Bradford Project, located on the intersection of Davis Drive and High House Road, is a combination of luxury apartments and is uniquely infused with public art and green space.
Crossland Southeast, a leading retail development firm, began construction after the project's approval in 2007.
Construction is divided into two phases. The first phase, which will cost about $70 million, covers 42 acres. It consists of 370 apartments and 20 townhomes.
The second phase includes 60,000 square feet of retail space and 60,000 square feet of office space. It covers 13 acres and is anchored by Publix, a Florida grocery store. Despite the appeal of these apartments and retail stores, the construction required has led to concern for the surrounding environment. The effects are plentiful and the damage is potentially irreversible.
One of the biggest environmental concerns in construction is air pollution.
Some other concerns are soil erosion, which can lead to habitat destruction, noise pollution, and improper disposal of solid waste.
It is up to environmentalists, such as those in the EPA, to study these effects and find a solution.
Hello?
It depends, but it does depend on where you're doing the constructing. And so, where you are, I'm trying to think about the environment that you're in. You're in the North Carolina area. So, there, one of the concerns would be, the first thing is removal of all the vegetation. And, was that vegetation and everything else associated with it, the birds, the bees, the, pollinators, the whatever, adversely affected, were they important to the communities that surround them? So that would be the first thing.
Since the site of the Bradford Project was not a highly forested area, the main organisms directly affected were those in the soil.
An example of an indirect effect would be the possible contamination of nearby water quality.
While they're constructing, a lot of stuff can run off in terms of, after a heavy rain. So there's a lot of dirt lying around, and that can run off into streams that are close by. And if that happens, then that can affect fish populations in those streams. Things that, people like to do is catch fish, and so, you might find that it affects the fish, but it also might affect the water quality itself. And depending on where that water goes, if it's actually used for drinking water, it might affect it depending on what, they're using, what chemicals they're using when they're doing their construction. I mean, one can think of a number of chemicals that they might have used, such as, this may be dating myself, but back in the day they used to inject wood with chemicals to keep them from rotting, and those chemicals could be heavy metals and, toxics, that are not very good to have go into your water supply.
Possible ramifications of the Bradford construction project include pollution of the Neuse River, Carey's water basin. Contaminated river water can kill aquatic organisms as well as pollute drinking water for nearby residents.
Not only are residents forced to drink polluted water, but they also breathe contaminated air.
Another thing that they often do at construction sites is burn all their unused, lumber and burn the vegetation that they knock down. So that creates, airborne smoke particles. And when you do that, our research has shown that it can actually affect the incidence of heart attacks. And asthma sufferers also can be affected. Yeah, it's a really interesting piece of research, which you need to talk to somebody else about it, but I know about it. What happens is that the smoke particles, are inhaled, and then they're so small that they actually get in there and change the electrical activity of the heart, and you can actually have a heart attack. So,
although vegetation was not burned at Bradford, the construction still resulted in air pollution. Causes of air pollution at Bradford include wood and dust particles and fumes from the machinery.
There's a couple things that are happening here, and one is that there are various levels of government. There's the federal EPA, but there's also state agencies, and they have their rules, and there are counties, and they have their rules, and restrictions on how construction goes forth. And so, at each level, there's something that each government agency can do to prevent, bad things from happening. The EPA, for instance, at the federal level, requires that, you don't exceed certain, chemical concentrations of something in the water or something in the groundwater, and the states usually adopt those criteria. And of course, if you're really looking for something, to affect change, going to your own city council meetings and saying, "Hey, I'm really concerned about this or that," is very effective.
Cary Teen Council meets on the third Tuesday of each month at the Community Center from 6:45 to 8 p.m.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I can answer it in a couple ways. One is, when you talk about environmental concerns, the construction itself can affect humans. And let me give you an example of that. When they put together a lot of housing or apartments or whatever, sometimes they use plywood that is made up of bits of wood that are all kind of glued together. That glue and some of the chemical compounds they use to make it all stick together do what they call degas, and they let off that gas. It could be formaldehyde, it could be anything, into the actual living space. So you can have that kind of effect on humans. And yet, I think that the construction industry is getting a lot more sensitive, because they've been told that they have to preserve certain areas, like wetlands, and create wetlands, destroy them. So I think it's kind of a mixed answer, but all that being considered, if construction continues, to reflect the growth of population, then even if they're very careful, there's still going to be a lot of changes to the ecosystems.
As you can see, the construction of one building can have an adverse effect on not just one ecosystem, but multiple.